Today in the book of Genesis, we're going to be looking at the book of Colossians. This is kind of a summary of the entire book, that we go to the New Testament and all the different stories that we read and all the different activities that we saw that these godly men of God do in the Old Testament, and some ungodly things that they did that they had to be rebuked for, are brought over now into the New Testament, and we're going to see some of the theology behind some of the lives that we saw in the Old Testament and how those principles bear out. We're going to be especially talking about our Lord Jesus and his deity and his creative powers and these other things, how if you've not seen it, there is on iTunes under Central Baptist Church, Eureka, Missouri. There is a study that we just completed, 12 episodes on Jesus before Bethlehem. And in it we talk about the angel of the Lord and manifestations of Jesus in the Old Testament. And so I recommend it to you where you can see Jesus actually in the Old Testament doing these things through the personification of the angel of the Lord. But today we're in Colossians chapter 1, and we're going to begin, if someone would read verses 15 through 17 for us. Colossians chapter 1, verses 15 through 17.
Okay. And he is the
image, supremacy of Christ. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For by him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things were created by him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And he is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning and the firstborn from among the dead, so that in everything he might have the supremacy.
Thank you, Jim.
I read a little bit.
That's fine. You know, a lot of people think that John chapter 1 is one of the best places to see the divinity of Christ. You know, the Word was with God and the Word was God. Through him all things were created, and who became flesh, and he dwelt among us. This is John 1:1, 3:14. But our passage here in Colossians, we see that it has language also about the deity of Christ, and it's very plain too. There are those who believe that Paul's words here in verses 15 through 17 were actually a confession that the early Christians would repeat to show that they had true faith in Jesus Christ. And so what Jim just read for us is part of this, if you will, confession that they would make to maybe before baptism or some other time, to show other Christians that they had truly believed in Jesus as their Lord and as their Savior. You know, there are things that we believe about Jesus, you know, his life, his good works, his death on the cross, his resurrection, are all important, but these truths about his ministry here upon earth really rest upon the fact that Jesus is the eternal Son of God. You see, no man can come and die for sins because he himself is sinful. And so God had to do for us what we could not do for ourselves, and that is that God had to become flesh, or as the Bible tells us, he had to become Emmanuel, our God among us. And so it's why of first importance that a person believe in the deity of Christ before he can truly believe that Jesus is who he claimed to be, because without this premise, then we're not on solid ground. And this is what makes it so dangerous. Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons, who both talk about Jesus being created, or a created being. Now what we're going to see here is that he is the creator. And while they misuse some of these statements, we're going to see here in a moment that these are statements really which back up the fact and show that he indeed is God in the flesh. We see that if we would go on in the verses, and Jim read some of them for us, but in verses 18 through 20, we see that it talks about Jesus' life, death, burial, and resurrection, and these are important parts of belief in Christ. But notice, he is the image of the invisible God. And so when you look at his life, his ministry, and his work, you see God himself, because he is the eternal Son of God. He is one with the Father. He talked to Philip. Philip came to him one day and he says, you know, Jesus, just show us the Father. Now, Philip was a good Jew, and he knew that the Bible said that no man may see God and live. And so Jesus says to him, Philip, have I been with you so long and you've not seen me, you've not known me? And Philip, you know, I'm sure looked at him and was confused. And Jesus says, well, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. I and the Father are one. That's what it's talking about, this equality with God, this equity that Jesus has with the Father, that the Father, Son, Holy Spirit are all God, all co-equal. It's been said, I think it was Spurgeon, but I wouldn't stake my life upon it. He said if there were just the Father and no Son or Spirit, he would still be God. If there were just the Son and no Father and Spirit, Jesus would still be God. And if there were just Spirit and no Father and Son, he would still be God. And so all three persons of the Trinity are God, each in of their own selves, but they form one God. And this is why the Jews today mostly reject Jesus, is because our claim to Jesus' deity, that he is God too. And they can't distinguish how God can be a triunal God, even though their own, as on Wednesday night we've learned that the Jews believed that there was a visible God and an invisible God in the Old Testament. And this is out of their own commentaries that they talk about God visible and God invisible. They had no way of reconciling this fact, that God at times showed himself, even though God said no man can see me and live. And yet there are times that God spoke through the bush and through other earthly elements to them, but not physical.
No, it says here that he's invisible. That's his spiritual nature, obviously. But Jesus being the image of the invisible God is somewhat difficult to understand, I think, because an image is usually of something that you can see, that's in existence. But you know, I was thinking, when we have who can see the wind? The wind comes and goes, we can't see it. But we try to, in art, we try to show the wind by, you know, a little line, a little swirl. So that's an image to show there's wind, but really we can't see the wind. And in the same way, this, you know, Jesus is literally the image of God, even though God is invisible. And that's a difficult concept, I think, for many people to understand.
Yeah, the word image.
I'm sorry, guys, if I may.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I understand it more, guys, through time. Again, took a lot to understand. But as this proceeds through God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, then comes us. Well, do we really recognize that we are the sons and daughters of the living God? That we, believe it or not, are created on the inside of us His image. Do we really understand after salvation that we are part of this protocol and family? And do we understand the responsibility, us, here on earth, having this glorious designation, the sons and daughters of the living God, us?
You know, there's another aspect to this word image, and that is we often think of image as being something that is material or concrete, but when it talks even in Genesis about being created in the image of God, it's not so much that we look like God as much as it is we have the nature
Attributes.
and the attributes of God. although not perfect. You know, God is, for example, omniscient. He knows everything. We have a mind that allows us to know things. God is all-powerful. We call it omnipotent. We have certain kinds of powers, too, that we can exercise, but they're limited. They're not the unlimited power that God has. We have a presence. I look over here, I see Laura. There's a presence of Laura. But God's presence is everywhere. And so in a smaller way, we have attributes that are God's attributes. We can do good things. We can be gracious. We can be merciful. We can be judgmental. So we have all of those aspects, the nature, the characteristics of God, but in a much more limited way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Hebrews 1:3 really sums it up maybe better what it means to be in the image of God, because it says Jesus is the radiance of God's glory, the exact representation or exact expression of God. And so, you know, he is just, you want to know what God the Father is like, look at Jesus, is what it's saying.
Exactly.
Is that, you know, we look in the Old Testament, we say, oh, the God of the Old Testament, you know, he's a God of wrath, you know, but God of the New Testament is God of love. Mm-hmm. Well, that's a misnomer, because, you know, he's always the same God. He never changes. He's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And so if we really want to know and understand the heart of God, we need to look at Jesus and what he did in his earthly life in order to truly understand what God is truly like. Notice that Paul says...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Doug, that's absolutely the truth, man. You know, God's Word says that we, us now again, men and women, today, we are to pursue, with all our heart, soul, and mind, to emulate the attributes of Jesus. That's what he wants us. You know what I've listened to many, many times, and God bless you, this isn't directed at you fellas, but it's directed wholly in teaching, is sometimes we make this too distant. And what it does is it separates us, our day-to-day responsibility, being a real part of the equation. And I think it's so important to see your worth in Christ, not in a prideful way as man or woman in the flesh, but what he said your worth is as a king and queen and a priest, his behalf as we dwell on earth. And I see that in Christianity being huge. That one of the reasons we don't do what we're capable of. You know, he said in Scripture, he says that, hey, you'll do greater works than me. But it's all about your faith in him to accomplish that goal. Oh, if we only knew what he could do with us if we were willing to go.
Mm-hmm. Notice the next statement, though. It says, Jesus as the firstborn over all creation. Now, this is where the cults misuse it. And they say, see, he is the firstborn. He's the first person to be created. But this is not what it means there. It seems to even contradict the fact that he's deity. But firstborn language in the New Testament is not about biological birth order, but about rank or status. And so what it means is that Jesus is over all creation. Exodus 4:23 talks about Israel, his firstborn son. Well, we know that Isaac was not the firstborn son. We know that Ishmael was actually the firstborn son, but God wouldn't accept Ishmael. And so he calls Isaac Abraham's firstborn son. And so it's not about who's biologically first, and it doesn't mean that Jesus is actually the first one to be created. What it's talking about is status, that he's over all the rest, that he has that precedent, that he is the one who God is going to use and appoint to rule over all the earth. So, biblically speaking, firstborn is not the first or the oldest son, but rather a special status of title as the heir. We see this with Esau and his brother Jacob, that Esau was really the one who was entitled to the firstborn, but through trickery and other things, if he had just been patient, waited, God would have given him the rights to the firstborn. But because he was a conniver and he was a liar, he tricked those things out of Esau. So we see that how God overcame all that. But even he, Jacob, was the firstborn son, even though biologically he was not the firstborn. And so the special status is talking about ruler over creation. And we know that Jesus is the Son of God. We know that he is eternal. We know that he is unique. In fact, the word begotten, in John 3:16, for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son. If he's the only begotten, what it's saying is he's the only unique Son of God. He's the only one like him. God has many sons. Sometimes angels are called sons of God. Sometimes the adopted children through Christ are called sons of God. We are all sons, and as Barry said a minute ago, we are all sons of the King. We are all children of the King, sons and daughters. But when you talk about the begotten, the only begotten, you're talking about someone who's unique and unlike all the rest. And Jesus is separate from us, and he's separate from creation. Now notice what he goes on, and he proves this in verses 16 and 7, when he says that he is not only the firstborn over creation, but he is the creator. Everything was created, look at this, by him, through him, for him. Jesus is the reason we exist. Now, just let that settle in your heart and your life for a little bit. That the reason we are here is because of Jesus. That somehow, somewhere in eternity past, the Godhead decided that even though they were sufficient in and of themselves, they needed no one else, that for Jesus' sake, they were going to create and they were going to populate the world. And so for Jesus, we're told that it was by him, that is his creative power, through him, and that is through his deity, but also for him. He is to be the recipient of all creation. And this is why we give glory and praise and honor to the Father through Jesus Christ the Son. Notice there's a clear distinction between the Creator and his creation. Jesus could not be Creator and the firstborn of creation. That's an impossibility. And so what it's saying, what we had said before, it proves that Jesus not only is the Creator, but he is also the ruler of all creation. He is separate from his creation and distinct. This is what Paul talks about it in Romans chapter 9, I believe it is, about God is the potter and we are the clay. As Creator, he can make out of us what he wants, some for grandiose purposes, other for common, everyday uses. None of us are the same. But God likes variety. He likes distinction. That's why no snowflake is ever alike. You think about all the quadrillion, trillion snowflakes that fall, that cover an area when it snows, and how many of those little snowflakes it takes to make that much snow, and yet not one of them is an exact representation of another. None of them are alike because God likes variety, and that's why none of us are alike. Why we're all different, because God likes distinction, and he likes individuality. And so we see, for the sake of Jesus, he is the Creator, and it's by him, through him, and for him that all things are created.
Another thought here, when it talks about before all things, and this last phrase is one that I think you've mentioned many times, and that's by him all things hold together. Were it not for Jesus, literally the whole created universe would just be in chaos. When we think about an asteroid possibly hitting the Earth, shoot, that would be nothing compared to the whole universe just literally falling apart, were it not for Jesus being the one that holds all things together. It's a nice phrase, But when you really kind of contemplate it a little bit and meditate on it, it is amazing how, without Jesus, all that would just be in total chaos, crashing into each other, destroying, being destructive, and yet he holds it all together in a perfect order. The pastor's going to mention something in the sermon. If you didn't mention it, Dennis was in there with me, but he mentioned something about the earth and the 23-degree tilt of the earth and the rotation of the earth around the sun and the sun itself, and all these things are just perfectly aligned so that we can have the life that we have within this material universe. Jesus is the one who makes all that happen, holds it together, and keeps things from just flying apart. So it's an amazing little piece of scripture that I think we just can easily overlook without understanding what the implications are.
Yeah, the universe be like a big pool table.
Yeah, really it would. Especially when I play pool, they go everywhere except the pocket.
That's correct. Yeah, but not only on the macro level, on the micro level too.
Oh, yes.
You know, the smallest unit that we know of now, they say they found something smaller than an atom, but think of an atom, which is an electron rotating around a neutron. What keeps those electrons from flying off?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
it's like the planets around the sun. We know there is some science behind it that does it, but what causes them to do that? You know, gravity comes, it's not of its own self. You know, somebody made it to be so dense that it would have a gravity well and it would cause these other planets to. But just think, if Jesus took his hands off us just for a second, we would literally fly apart. You know, there would be no cohesiveness to us, to our bodies, to things at all, if he would just stop thinking about us for a second.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's a wonderful thought,
Yes, it is.
to think that all things really are dependent upon him.
Yeah.
Okay, notice here that it says, you know, what we're trying to get out of this, that Jesus is not just a mere man. You know, he's God himself who stepped into human history to save us, and because Jesus is God in the flesh, our salvation is sure and is secure. So let's go on to our second part of this, and that is, now we're going to turn to Psalms 103, verses 15 through 19. Rochelle, you want to read that for us, please?
As for man, his days are like grass. As a flower of the field, so he flourishes. When the wind has passed over, it is no more, and its place acknowledges it no longer. But the loving kindness of the Lord is from everlasting to everlasting on those who fear him, and his righteousness to children's children, to those who keep his covenant and who remember his precepts to do them. The Lord has established his throne in the heavens, and his sovereignty rules over all.
You know, Paul said these words, to live as Christ and die as gain. And we all want to believe this beautiful truth. You know, but contemplating our mortality is, you know, never fun. You know, who wants to die? Let me give you a personal episode that happened to me this past week, and that is, I believe I'm as ready as the next man to die and be with the Lord. There are times I've said that, you know, I'm just kind of done with it all. You know, I'm sick of all the sin in the world and all the evil, and it just seems like things are going from bad to worse. But Tuesday night I woke up in the middle of the night and I couldn't breathe. I was having a breathing spasm. And I went out and I'm sitting on the couch by myself and I'm thinking to myself, I may die, you know. And I don't want to wake Rochelle up, because if I don't die, you know, she's going to be really mad at me for waking her up.
That's good.
You look bad.
That's true, I'm sure.
And so I'm contemplating this, and as I am, I'm not praying, yeah, God, take me to you. You know, I'm ready. You know, let's go. No, I'm praying is, God, let me get my next breath.
That's right.
You know, don't let me die. Help me to keep breathing. What's going on here?
Yeah.
You know, we can be prepared, but it doesn't mean that we want to go right now. You know, we all should be prepared. We all should, know that our faith is real and that, Jesus is our Lord and Savior and that He's with us always. He's going to take us home to heaven when we die. But it doesn't mean I want to go right now.
Those are true words. That's the truth.
Yeah. I mean, I associate, and I guess there's others here that associate with what Doug said. I know that ever before, I think I'm more prepared as a man than ever before to go. I know I'm going to go because I have a relationship with Him, and I know I can trust Him with me. Where I've entered into that in a small degree, still many stages for me yet, but I know that. I know I'm going to heaven and be with Him because I trust Him with me. And so do I want to go? Yes. Do we still have something to do while we draw breath? Him? Yes. And, but the bottom line is, and Paul said it pretty clear, he said, man, if I had my druthers, I want to go. Get this friggin' challenge over with. But he said, no, not yet. Your will, not mine. That's kind of what Doug's saying. When we come to a point, I'm with you, Doug, in the realm of a full-bodied life, and I've seen the world in most aspects. I don't mean travel, I mean the world and the essence of sin, as you have. And I'm tired of it too. But we still got something to do.
Right.
I think it's more difficult when we're healthy to think in terms of the future than those who are just really ill and suffering and in pain constantly. My dad was that way for about 6 months with cancer. And several times he'd tell me, son, I'm just ready to go home. He was a good Christian man, a mentor for me, and I emulate him in many ways, good and bad. But he was ready to go, and he was in such pain that the idea of leaving this world really did not bother him. It was something he actually looked forward to. But when you're healthy and you're doing things, you always have something to look forward to do the next day.
Yeah.
And sometimes that, I think, takes our eyes off of ultimately being with Jesus.
Well, if it could be like a light switch and you could just flick it, that'd be fine.
Yeah.
But I don't want to suffer.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, really.
I don't want to lay there in agony, and
Yeah.
I really don't want to suffer. But if my grandfather was my dad's dad, he was having a conversation with my aunt. She was cooking their lunch, and they're having a conversation, and she just noticed that he quit talking to her, and she went in there, and he was gone.
Yeah.
I mean, right in the middle of a conversation, he passed away. Well, that's the way I want to go.
Yeah, I don't want all this suffering and everything. Right. Yeah.
I want to be here today, gone tomorrow. I mean,
Just close your eyes and gone.
that's right.
Yeah.
And it's part of the unknown and the suffering, I think, that scares us.
Yeah.
And we can be prepared and yet be scared a little bit.
Well, yeah.
Because it's not, I mean, we've got what Scripture says, but it's very limited. There's more about heaven or hell than there is about heaven in the Bible. And so what we have is very limited, and why I know it's going to be wonderful, and Paul says beyond our imagination, there still is the unknown there.
Sure.
And yet Paul says, but for your sakes I'm going to remain.
Right.
And that's kind of how, I guess I feel, and that's, I believe, what Barry was saying too.
Yeah.
That as long as God's not done with us, we're going to remain here.
Right.
And we'd just be waiting on. Well, anyway, this gets us back to a point of how the psalmist started out here in verse 15, and he says to us, your life is fleeting and your time is short.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, that's really a booster, isn't it? You're here today, you're gone tomorrow.
Yeah.
But, enjoy it. And so we see here that we know it's because of sin, because of what happened in the Garden of Eden. Sin spread. It spread to Adam and Eve's descendants and spread to all people. And even though God limited people through Noah to Noah and his family, these 8 people, they still had sin. They continued to pass sin along. And God knew by keep killing the population off, you weren't going to get rid of the sin problem. And so he just allowed it to go on until such time that he could bring a remedy to that, and that's through Jesus' sacrificial death on the cross in our place. So even though life is short, we know that in comparison to eternity, our lives are really a blimp. You know, think about it for a while. I'm watching a documentary on the Beatles that they did in 1969. And here they're the most famous musical group that ever lived in all eternity. You know, John made that statement, we're more famous than Jesus Christ, you know. Yeah. But in 100 years, will they be remembered? Will people really care about them? Will their music, you know, be eternal? I don't think they're going to be singing in heaven. You know, I don't believe that's what, you know, the angels are going to be singing when we get there. Fame, fortune, notoriety, all these things are fleeting. They're not going to last. I went into Ancestry a few years ago and tried to find our lineage and got back 2 or 3 generations, was completely stopped because they had changed the family name somewhere along the line. And so I can't even tell you who my great-great-grandparents are. I have no idea. You know, they're forgotten. They're gone, unless maybe the old side of the family, you know, remembers them. What I'm saying is that this life is so temporal, it's so insignificant in comparison to the Trinity, none of us are going to be remembered. We're going to die and we're going to be maybe some tombstones. Somebody go look at our headstones and maybe do a rubbing on it one day, you know, and say, oh, here is my distant relative who, you know, their remains are still here. But in God's realm, in God's eyes, he says he's written our names on the back of his hand. He's talking about how close we're going to be with him forever, the relationship that we're going to have with him. And our names are written down in the Lamb's book of life, which is eternal. Now that's notoriety.
You know, something else in this passage, I notice it begins with, you know, his days are like grass, but you go down to just the end of verse 17, you know, God's love towards those who fear him and his righteousness toward the grandchildren of those who keep his covenant. I think I fail my kids in a lot of ways. And when you get grandchildren and grandchildren come along, you know, you just kind of want to have a heart to do something better with them. You want to act a little more loving, perhaps, you know, not do some of make the mistakes you made with your own children. But it's interesting to me, this little passage, that if you live a righteous life, you live the best life you can according to the precepts that the Bible holds, that, you know, there's a blessing, there's a righteousness toward the grandchildren. Maybe the grandchildren will be better than the children. I don't know. My kids, I think, so far it's been the case.
A lot of that isn't it, though, because when we have our own children, we're so busy earning a living.
Yes, it is. It is.
That we come home and we're tired.
Yeah.
You know, we've got expectations and they get pushed aside, and we always got to go to dance class or to a baseball game or to some musical, that you can't really enjoy it.
Right. Because it's work.
But once you're old like us, you got nothing to do.
Yeah, you got to raise the grandkids. Go watch the kids. Yeah, really.
Guys, that is so true. The busyness of life in those moments when we're younger men, and it's overwhelming. You don't really get it as it is until you're where we're at now, looking back at how overwhelming it is. But I have such a sensitivity to younger men in the midst of where I was years ago, trying to serve the Lord like God wants them to. And not just men, but women too. Man, it's tough. The influence of the world is difficult to overcome when you have all that responsibility. The tragic thing with me, guys, and it hurts me, in the center of me, is the ones that are, I call it the hamster wheel. The ones that are right in there, rung to run, with with all that busyness that die young and never get a chance to be us, to have a new gravity of the experience and where the true worth is. It's just magic, all those millions of men and women through time that just died in between and never got a chance to share briefly what we're sharing right now.
You know, there's another aspect to this, I think, and that's, Donna mentioned something some time back to me, and it had to do with some things she had done earlier in her life. And she said, you know, all the wasted years that I did certain things, they're not evil, but just all the wasted years. And I feel the same way. There have been times when I have wasted time that I thought I was enjoying myself. I was, but I could have been doing some other things other than that. We all have wasted years. I don't know of any human being that hasn't had wasted years, or that feeling that, boy, I should have been doing something different than what I was. Laura, you have thought there?
We talk about that a lot in our Bible study,
Yeah.
and I think God uses those times to teach us a lesson, to build our faith, and to make us focus on what we're doing wrong so that we see God in the light.
Yeah. You know, I had kidney disease for 4 years, as most of you know, and I lost 4 years of my life. But, you know, in some ways I don't think they were wasted, because truthfully it slowed me down. It made me see things that I was doing that I didn't need to be doing. I should have been doing some other things. And so, you know, I think you're right. God sometimes puts us through these experiences, whatever they may be, just to show us that there's something different we should be doing, that we should be doing more for Him, more in a particular area of service, and not paying so much attention to the things that just bring us immediate gratification.
Yeah, it talks about
Well, Randy, that's
keeping
so
his
true.
covenant.
You know, you're talking to I'm sorry.
Go
You're
ahead.
talking to a brother sitting here. Yeah, I'm sitting here day to day now, and guys, don't feel sorry for me. It's been good for me. I'm stronger now as a believing man than ever before. Pray I get stronger. But I sit in an electrical chair all day, man. I mean, it's next to my bed. I water in it minute all day. I never get out of it while I'm awake. And I do everything well other than, you know, taking care of what you have to take care of. But it's amazing how humility has come to me.
Yep.
Oh, pride that I had, the wrong kind, in myself, and the physical part of the flesh, and the busyness of the flesh. You know, I've been a coach all my life. I was a coach in business, a coach in athletics. That's my MO. But what you said, it resonates with me in a deep way, Randy. When we go to a place to where we're humbled like that, and I'm in that place, it's been good for me. Because if you look up, instead of get mad and look down and get mad about it, oh, there's tremendous blessings when you are forced to go make a decision. Well, do I need to listen to you where I'm at right now? Or do I need to go ahead and be stubborn and bullheaded and blame somebody else for what's happened?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, notice he says it's from eternity to eternity. You know, God's love and His faithfulness not dependent on us, whether we're faithful or not, but dependent upon Himself, His own goodness and grace. And in the Old Testament, the saints looked forward and hoped in the coming of, you know, the descendant, Jesus Christ, was going to come. In the New Testament, those of us who come after, we hope in the same descendant. We now know Him as Jesus Christ, the God-man who kept God's covenant, redeemed us. And because God sits on His heavenly throne, He's able to guide providentially all of history to His desired culmination. And we know that He's going to one day make all things new. We know His plans can't be thwarted, and we know that His promises will all happen according to His divine will. Now let's move on to point 3. We don't have time to read all this. This is a long verses 25 through 34 of Matthew 6, but this is Jesus' commentary on worry and why we as Christians should not worry. And it can be looked at really from two different perspectives, from the rich side as well as from the poor side. But there's the same point to both. Your abundance of possessions or lack of possessions do not define your life. That is, what you have isn't the essence of who you are as a person. Things can be taken from us very quickly. You know, here today, gone tomorrow, you know, they would say. And so, you know, there could be, like what happened in the 30s, the market crash, and all these rich people could be jumping off of buildings like the people did back then. You know, it's fleeting, and therefore Jesus' whole thing is saying, don't let your possessions define who you are. And he gives an illustration. Teacher's book says bottom shelf thinking, and that is, it talks about God's creation, things that really are passive in the way that God provides for them, such as flowers. You know, they don't have barns, storehouses, they don't stock up food, but God cares about them, and God provides for them. And the same thing about birds, you know. Birds don't, you know, squirrels do. They store up.
Yeah, they do.
But birds don't. You know, they have to forage and they have to find their own food, but they don't worry about it. They don't sit around thinking the nest, you know. Why don't you get out there and look for a while? I haven't been able to find anything. You know, we're going to starve to death, you know. You know?
Yeah, that's right.
The female says to the male, you're supposed to provide for us. You know? What are you doing sitting here?
Yeah.
Now, get out there. And so we see here that he goes to the top shelf now. From creation, flowers, birds, you know, God provides for all those things. And as Christians, we should understand that God cares about all creation, and so should we. Now, it doesn't mean we're tree huggers, but we should care about creation. We should care about pollution, you know, and these type of things. But there's ways of doing that without, you know, going to the other extreme that some of these other politicians have gone. But he wants us to think in terms of human beings. You know, people are made in the image of God. As his image bearers, God cares for us, especially those of his own children. Just a week or two ago, Randy told us about Joseph and God's providential care for Joseph. Just think about that years before the famine, God sends Joseph to Egypt. Now, his brothers actually do it, but Joseph is smart enough in chapter 50 of Genesis to say, but God was behind it. You did the evil, but God was going to use it for a good purpose. And so he goes to Egypt. He found favor with, you know, the jailer, with the other people, and God continued to bless Joseph. But he did it in order to preserve the line, the godly line of the Messiah that he's going to come through, and that is through Judah. And so we see here that God took Joseph and used him in a way that maybe Joseph would not have chosen to be used, but he did it in order to save an entire nation, that is the nation of Israel. In all this, Jesus asked, how could you have such little faith if you worry? And the reason being is that we need possessions. We need basic things. We need food, homes, cars. Cars are a necessity anymore. You know, they're not a luxury like they may have been, you know, 50, maybe 100 years ago. My grandfather never owned a car. He lived in St. Louis and rode the bus everywhere he wanted to go. But today is a necessity. And so Jesus is not saying you should, you know, starve or you should go naked and unclothed. What he's saying is you need to trust God to give you the basics of life, because you can trust him. If he's done the greatest thing for you, and that is he sent his son Jesus Christ to die on the cross and die in your place, is he not going to take care of the lesser things in your life? That's the things you've got to weigh. If he's done the greatest thing, Does he not care about the lesser things that are going to sustain you and keep your life going? And so, these are the things that, yeah.
You know, I'm sorry. The small things in life are the ones that make the big things take care of themselves. The appreciation of the small blessings. You know, you were talking about people want to pull their brains out and jump out of the windows in the 30s. Well, I'm just a grassroots guy, and I had born and raised in a small town, and now I'm an older guy in another small town. But I had a moment through effort and savings, and I retired early. Here I am, me, and I leave business in 2006. My main motive is I wanted to be a head coach in the Eureka football program. I was an old jock, and I wanted, while I still had health, to give something back. Well, you guys have heard that story. I did it. If you come to my lounge and my dining area here where I'm sitting, I've got pictures all the way around the chair rail of each one of those years. So I was successful there in giving back those families and kids through athletics. But get this. Okay, I'm fine. I got money in the bank. I still qualify for my company's retirement. And I leave at 57 years old in 2006. And 2008 comes. I lose over $500,000 within 6 months. And you talk about a humbling eye-opener, guys. But I'm going to kill myself ever. I'm going to jump out of my window. But man, was there a lesson in where you put your trust and your faith? And well, I like to have that back, you betcha. But, gee, as I quote it now, it was a good lesson. Doggone it.
Yeah. Jesus says the Gentiles eagerly seek all these things. He's not talking here about the unbelievers who are going to believe in Christ later on. You know, the Bible separates, you know, Jews and Gentiles. He's not talking about them irrespective here. He's talking about just as unbelievers now. He say people who don't believe in Jesus, their Savior Lord, this is where they put all their time and effort in as Barry just saying, you know, in gaining things and having a lot and showing off for their neighbors, you know, keeping up with the Joneses. We're so poor we don't even have any Joneses in our neighborhood. So, yeah, there's a difference. And what he's saying here is that we've got to trust God. The Gentiles are far from God, and they don't worry because, they do worry because they don't have anybody to turn to, but we've got God. And this is what he's talking about. We need to trust God. We need to look to Him in faith. But how do we do that? Well, Jesus, once again, as always, gives us the answer. Put God first and His kingdom, the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. When we put God first in our thinking, in our lives, in the way we do business, as long as we keep God first, God is going to provide the things that we need. I like what the teacher's book said. Let me just read it, what they said. It says, not to say that we'll just pray and food will fall like manna from heaven. It doesn't mean that we should become homeless and starving in order to follow Christ. Instead, Jesus is setting up a heart posture. Whether you have much or whether you have little, the command is the same for God's people. Do not let the worries of life consume your entire life. Don't worship possessions. Don't pine over what you're going to wear or what you're going to eat. No, seek God's kingdom. Rest in God's providential love and grace, and He will give you what you need. And as I was reading this and thinking about it, I remembered a song by, his name was Smith, not William, but another Smith, and he took Psalm 37:25 and he made it into a song. It says, I've not seen the righteous forsaken or their children begging for bread. And you know, that's a promise that God gives to his people, is that he's going to provide for us, he's going to take care of us, and we just have to put him first. And when we do, all the important things will be taken care of.
You know, one of the things I noted here in this very short passage, the title for the passage is the Lord's hand provides what we need, provision. But one of the interesting things, 6 times the word worry or worrying or something like that comes up in this very brief passage. It's don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. Tomorrow, don't worry about tomorrow, because you got tomorrow has enough worry of its own.
And they're all
to take care of today. Yes, that's right. That's right. But
Yeah,
notice.
that's good, Randy. In addition to that, Randy, yeah, that's good. What else does he say, brothers and sisters? He says, there's nothing more, man or woman, than to eat, to drink, to be merry in this life, whatever the family tree that you have is, but that is the portion that God gives us for the challenges and the labor of our existence on earth. When you break it down, and many of us in this group, 2 of them that does the speaking, absolutely in this category, and I respect you guys for seeing it. When you start to break it down to the bare nub, when you start to break down a man or a woman's life and what gives you pleasure, it really goes almost right down, or not almost, it goes down to what he said. Have a good meal, enjoy a good drink, whatever that is. You know, if it's alcohol or something like that, then I'm against it if you have too many, because he says a lot about being drunk. But, and enjoy your family, the simple things. He says, mind your own business, keep your bed at home, wake up early, go to bed early, because there's success in that. And boy, to come to a point, guys, where you realize that's really where it's at, it excommunicates all that other stuff that the world tries to con us into needing.
And you know, there's one other point in there, and that is the basis for all of these worries and things is little faith. That's that one little word, a couple of words in there, but ye of little faith. That's what causes worry, and then worry, you know, translates into all these devastating things that happen to us.
Despondency.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
All these.
Yeah.
And none of them are good.
None of them are good.
And that's why they're an imperative. Do not.
Thank you, Randy.
Do
You
not.
know, 6 times it says, do not worry.
Right.
Or stop.
Stop worrying.
Stop worrying.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's an imperative.
Yes, it is.
Well, what a good lesson today. Thank you, everybody, for, you know,
Yeah.
taking part. And anybody have anything they want to express before we leave? Everybody get a
Guys,
new?
I thought I heard Jim trying to get in there. Well, you know, what you said, Randy, just now is so true. And I've been accused of being a worry wart. And, you know, it's not showing enough faith when you worry. It's so true. And I'm so glad you said that. It helps immeasurably.
Yeah, we all can be guilty at time to time.
Yep.
And
Sure.
so that's why we all have to be alert to the fact that worry never accomplishes anything. Randy?
No.
Yeah. Let's close in prayer. Heavenly Father, again, we thank you for your mercy and the grace that you show to us continually, Lord, just every day. We thank you, Lord, for this lesson that helps us to understand who you are and what you're doing for us, what you have already done for us. We pray, God, that as we go through this week, that those little worries that nag at us, that you'd help us, Lord, to understand that those things are in many cases just tests to strengthen us and prepare us, even as you did Joseph. We thank you for that. We thank you, Lord, for the coming lesson. We thank you for this time of the season, Lord, when we really get our minds and hearts upon the coming of Jesus. Be with the pastor, be with us, Lord, as we go through our daily routines. With us, we pray in your precious name. Amen.
Thank you all.
Thanks a lot, Jim. Barry.